Out of 54 countries in Africa, 35 outlaw gay rights. In some places, the punishment for being gay is so severe you could face up to life in prison, even death. South Africa is the only African country that protects against discrimination based on sexual orientation. And gay marriage is legal there, and gay rights are enshrined in the Constitution. But now another Southern African nation, Botswana, appears to be making strides in that direction. A High Court ruling recently decriminalized consensual same-sex relations. But not everybody is happy about it, and there are now moves afoot to overturn that decision. So where does that leave us? This week, we look at the status of those in Africa who identify as LGBTQI, that's lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and intersex. Are African societies becoming more accepting of LGBTQI people or not? And what does progress on this issue look like in Africa? Welcome to Our Voices. I'm Hayley Adams-Fitzpatrick, and joining me are Oriane Itangishaka, Ayen Bior, and with us again is VOA's multimedia journalist Salem Solomon. Salem, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us, as always.
Thank you for having me, Hayley. It's great to be here. And here at VOA, we've done extensive reporting on the subject. And here's one of the reports that we've done in Botswana. Botswana's government is appealing a high court judgment from June, which overturned colonial-era laws against gay sex, the latest country to decriminalize gay relations through the courts in Africa. Botswana's religious and other conservative communities have welcomed the possibility to repeal the ruling, but human rights groups say it is a step backwards in an effort to ensure gay rights. Chinedu Ubeh reports from Gaborone.
Botswana's gay community and rights activists celebrated on June 11 when the country became the first in Africa to legalize gay sex through the courts. South Africa's 1994 constitution added protection for gay rights, while other African countries erased gay sex from their penal codes. But the victory could be short-lived, as Botswana's Attorney General is to appeal the ruling, stifling hopes for equal rights in the gay community. Botswana musician Tole is one of the country's few openly gay public figures.
My heart was saddened by that. I felt mortified by it because we were moving forward, we were making progress, and now it's like we're 2 steps back.
Botswana's conservative and religious communities, however, have welcomed the government's move against legalizing gay sex, which they deem immoral.
This is the challenge. It's not normal, and that is not how God wanted or intended human beings to be like. And therefore, now I'm very happy that the state has actually risen up to say, no, this has been an error.
The appeal will look at upholding Botswana's Penal Code sections 164 and 165, which are similar to anti-gay laws in other former British colonies, and jails those found guilty for up to 7 years. While rarely enforced, rights groups say the laws promote shaming and discrimination against gay people. The Botswana Network on Ethics, Law and HIV/AIDS, Bonela, says it will be a blow to gay rights if the High Court's overturning the laws is repealed.
They are really disappointed on hearing the news that government is appealing the June 11 case on decriminalization. The reasons being that it somewhat affirms that government has been supporting discriminatory tendencies, especially insofar as protecting policies and laws that discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation.
Meanwhile, for gay communities in Botswana and across Africa, the High Court's decision remains a beacon of hope for gay rights.
It means so much for the LGBTQ community because now we can be free to love who we love. We can be free to express ourselves. We can be free in the workplace. We can be free as human beings.
International attention will be on Botswana's Court of Appeal as it reviews the landmark judgment. Chinedu Ubeh for VOA News, Gaborone.
Great report from Dube there. This has happened this what just happened in Botswana has happened in some other countries on the continent. We've seen it in Mozambique, also in Lesotho, and most recently in February we saw it in Angola, where the long-standing colonial law to criminalize gay rights was revised. But when you look at the continent, people who are gay and LGBT people on the continent, right now as we speak, on the overall 54 nations of the continent, no country allows same-sex marriage except for South Africa, of course. But in the East Africa region that I cover, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, society regards that gay life is an act against the order of nature, and that is why it is illegal and even stipulated in their constitutions.
Well, I think this is such an important conversation to have, because there is this difference between what we see happening legally and what's permissible through the law, but then people's attitudes do not necessarily line up with that. And even in South Africa, South Africa's constitution was the first in the world to protect people from discrimination based on sexual orientation. The first, as we all know, in Africa to legalize same-sex marriage, and that happened in 2006. And at the time we saw this really big leap, a big step in terms of the law of the land, but we didn't really see the same kind of massive shift in public opinion or in public perception and acceptance of LGBTQI people. There's a clause in the Civil Union Act which legalizes same-sex marriage that still says that an ordained minister, anyone officiating over a marriage, except if they work for the government, they can refuse to officiate and that union if it goes against their traditions or beliefs, because that's why we still see things like corrective rape. People still feeling uncomfortable about gay marriage. People are trying to reconcile their faith, their beliefs with what's really happening, and we see there's a very real divide between the law and people's lived experience.
That's very true, because when you look at the continent, it's interesting that South Africa has that dynamic going on, but when you look at overall, as I said, the continent is very hostile. When you look at the leaders on the continent speaking, the governments and the society in Africa are constantly just asking to be respected for their point of view that is different from the position that the Western have taken. President Uhuru Kenyatta telling President Obama that they share, the two countries, United States and Kenya, share a lot of values and a lot of different other views on things. But when it comes to gay rights, their societies, American society and Kenyan society, definitely differ on that, and they should be respected.
That's so interesting to see, because when we are talking about how African leaders really feel, I must say South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa did come out telling South Africans to not just recognize people who are gay, but also to respect them and to also understand and know that they deserve protections under the law, as is their right.
Right, and that really should not be controversial. And I think that the death of David Kato in 2011 in Uganda is really emblematic of what can happen when laws do not protect gay people. David Kato was openly gay. He was also an activist in Uganda, and of course we know that Uganda has really harsh laws against gay people. And in 2013, Uganda passed legislation that lengthened the sentences of people who have sex with the same gender. And Amnesty International said that particular law institutionalized hatred as well as discrimination. But what's important to note with this particular law from Uganda is that not only could you go to jail for being gay, but anyone who promotes homosexuality can also go to jail for that. So what kind of precedent does this set? If you are a mother of a gay son or a gay daughter and you openly love your child, does this mean that you can also be a target of this particular law? I think it sets a dangerous precedent that we need to look at. But
by the same token, I have to say that I come from a very conservative family, and I will say the people who I love, who happen to be more conservative and feel very differently than many other people I know about gay rights, those are not necessarily people who would advocate for someone else to be hurt, to be killed, or to be deprived of anything. And I think that's important. But it's the extremists who jump on this bandwagon.
And I think I haven't heard presidents on the continent saying go kill them. It's just that they have a conservative views that I think that as governments and as presidents and as leaders of these nations, they have the legal responsibility to hold a moral code of conduct, and that they have
their
to
morality.
But just remember that when you make being gay illegal, you're essentially saying that gay people are criminals, and I think that that's why we see so much hate towards them and so much violence towards them, is because they're casted as criminals, under the law.
It gives license to.
And also, it's a mixture of, you have the law and also a mixture of like religious laws, for instance, in places like Somalia, in places like Sudan, where you have Sharia law, in places like Nigeria, northeastern Nigeria, where Muslim-dominant communities that are governed by Sharia. You see these things play out, including also conservative Christian cultures. But speaking of Nigeria, when we have a guest joining us to discuss the challenges of gay people seeking refuge in other countries. We'll be right back.
Voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about.
Sharing stories of development and growth across Africa,
around the world, and in our lives.
Topics that inform, empower,
and change the rules.
It's time for Our Voices.
With me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick.
And Hadiza Kiari.
And Ayan Bior.
And Orion Itangi Shaka.
Join us on Facebook at VOA Our Voices.
It's time for Our Voices. You're with Our Voices. Welcome back. For decades, Kenya has hosted refugees fleeing conflict, drought, and persecution in East Africa, including sexual minorities. Most gay refugees hope to resettle outside Africa to Western countries where gay rights are better protected. But while they wait, a process that can take years, one group of gay refugees is helping inform and educate others about their situation. Rael Ambor reports from Kiserian, Kenya.
Ready? Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Ugandan refugees Brian Kasali, Raymond Brian and Chris Waswa host weekly podcasts from a safe house in Kenya. The men tell their audience what it's like to be a refugee and to be gay, considered a crime in Uganda, punishable by life in prison.
Well, 2009, when Uganda introduced the anti-homosexuality bill, many people left their countries to different countries like Europe. They went to Germany, So for us, we just ran to Kenya, just because it was the nearest country to seek refugee.
While stigma is still common, Kenya is considered the East African country most accepting of gays, where refugees can wait without fear for transfer to Western countries with laws protecting gay rights. But the process is complex and can take years, says the United Nations Refugee Agency.
It's the governments of countries around the world, whether it's Australia or Canada or the United States or others, who determine what persons how many people they would like to be able to, they can resettle, how many people, what profile, what types of families, what types of individuals.
While waiting to leave Kenya, in 2015, a group of gay East African refugees formed the Nature Network to podcast on refugee and gay issues. Their shows are available on social media and through gay rights networks. The mainly Ugandan men earn a living by selling chicken to neighbors and local eateries.
When you're a refugee, it doesn't mean that your hands are gone. You need to work. If you can't afford living in a camp, and you can, because there is urban refugees, if you can afford to live being an urban refugee, that means you have to do projects.
Kenya's High Court on Friday is set to rule on whether or not to overturn a colonial-era law against gay sex. While the gay refugees at Nature Network welcome the possibility, most say they still want to leave Africa. A change in law might help change some people's views, says Brian, but the overall hatred and discrimination will still be there. Rael Ambor for VOA News, Kiserian, Kenya.
Earlier this year, a group of 76 refugees living in Kakuma, refugee camp from all over Africa, from 5 different African countries, were forced to leave Kakuma refugee camp again because they identified as people from the LGBT community. They eventually went to Nairobi, and when the community there found out that some of them were gay, some of them transgender, they experienced the same hostility that they saw in Kakuma. There are vast protections for refugees fleeing conflict, refugees fleeing drought. They have protections, international protections that protect them. But when it came to this particular group of refugees, they were displaced. They were displaced again because of their identity. For more on this conversation, we're joined via Skype by Edafe Okporo, the executive director of RDJ Refugee Shelter based in New York City. Born in Warri, Delta State, Nigeria, Edafe identifies as a member of the LGBT community, which he says led to his displacement in 2016 to the United States of America as a refugee. He joins us from Curacao. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
I was hoping that you could just tell us a little bit about your experience, especially the experience that led to you being displaced from your country, Nigeria.
Before I left Nigeria in 2016, I've been a victim of serial mob violence. But in 2014, the government of Nigeria passed a law that criminalizes same-sex relationship by 14 years imprisonment. And I was working for the first human rights organization that provide access to services for gay men, because after the law was passed in 2014, the rate of HIV among general population was 3.9, but the rate of HIV among gay men rose to 29.1. So there was high rate of HIV, but gay men were afraid to access services in healthcare facility. Even one of my friends named Emmanuel died because he refused to go to the healthcare facility to access service, because the last time he went there, the nurse told him that, oh, you are gay, that's why you have HPV. HPV is human papilloma virus, and the symptom is anal warts, but the nurse was like an illiterate or was just being stigmatizing. So while I was trying to provide access to services for gay men, I became a victim of target by my community. I was living in a Muslim-dominated community in northern Nigeria, where I was mobbed twice, and the last time was in 2016, July, my birthday period. It was very, very difficult for me, and I had to flee. So I traveled to Cairo. From Cairo, I traveled to the United States seeking asylum. So it was a series of mob violence that made me flee Nigeria in 2016.
Thanks for sharing that, your experience, Edafe, and I'm sorry to hear about what you had to go through. For people who are not really privy to what really happens in places, what you said, northeastern Nigeria, can you paint a picture for us on what everyday life is like for gay people?
So, my life, for example, I was kidnapped by a group of mob. I was chatting a guy on a gay dating app, and he told me that he was just trying to meet me like every other normal person we do. When I got to the place, I didn't know that they have arranged a siege. Like, they mobbed me up, took my phone, my wallet, and they told me that if I make any sound that they were going to report me to the police. And if they report me to the police, I will face 14 years imprisonment. If they report me to the community, it's punishable by being stoned to death. And the law says that 10 years for being an activist, amorphous show of public affection, you will be in prison. If your family member or friends try to shield or protect you, you will be persecuted. So there is no form of cohabitation between two same sex. If you are suspected of being gay, you will be penalized. A lesbian lady was drowned in Jos, Nigeria. She was put into a drum of water and locked. She tried to struggle to get out. She couldn't, and that is how she passed away. Series of attacks that gay people face. The most humiliating of them is called the walk of shame, where you will be stripped naked and put tires on your neck and asked to walk around the street. And if you are not lucky, if the police or law enforcement do not come, you will face jungle justice, like being burned to death or being flogged to death. Or if you can survive like I did, you black out, and your fate is just in the hands of the Creator. So I can't really explain, because different people face different attacks. But while I was working for the Human Rights Organization in Abuja, Nigeria, we saw that there was a rise of state violence by both state actors, that's like police and the law enforcement agency, and non-state actors. There is no hiding place for gay people in Nigeria.
Edafe, from what we gathered, when you came to the U.S., you were helped by a church. But when you were in Nigeria, where did you feel the strongest rejection? Was it the government? Was it the people? Was it the culture? Was it religious institutions? If so, what do you feel about it right now?
So I used to be a pastor. So I was a pastor of the Redeemed Christian Church of God. It's one of the biggest Pentecostal church in Nigeria. But while I was a pastor, I knew that I was a gay man. So there was this strong conflict between myself and what religious people think about me. But I have had sexual relationship with priests of the Catholic Church. I know gay men who are even pastors right now in Nigeria, and they still battle with themselves every single day. Religious institutions hold strong view against homosexuality, which is something that is quite surprising because the choir boys are gay, the cleaners, the sweepers, everybody in the church that they are not effeminate, but they are gay. So it's surprising when the church rejects people. If everybody to come out, everybody in the church, again, the strongest rejection I faced was from the church, but deep down inside, I know that people do not know what transpired between members of the church.
Edafe, in the US, you might have heard politicians say that they have had an evolving opinion or view on a controversial topic, especially same-sex marriage or gay rights. Have you seen that happen, where people have gone from absolute rejection of the idea to where people actually go to accept people in the LGBTQI community? And what, in your view, is the catalyst for that kind of change of heart and change of mind?
So I believe that visibility matters a lot for the LGBTQ community. In America, in the last 50 years, the gay rights movement have been the fastest paced movement in America, because in a gay rights movement march, you will see both white, black, Christian, Muslim, rich, poor can be able to come together on one specific issue, which you can't find on almost any other issue. So I believe that in Africa as a whole, gay people cannot be able to win the fight of gay rights by themselves because they are a minority. They have to be able to love, in despite the hate that they face, to be able to change the hearts and minds of people. I have seen it that love supersedes hate. And by doing so, creating visibility, showing people that this is who we are, we can't change, I think gradually get people to the point of changing. There are so many people I know that have changed. My family members, they couldn't change me. They end up changing to accept me. So I believe that is a core component of creating change, is living your true and authentic life when you feel safe about it.
Unfortunately, we have to stop right there. Edafe Okporo, the Executive Director of RDJ Refugee Shelter, thanks for sharing your experience with us.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
We want to get you talking on social media. Catch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Search for our handle at VOA Our Voices. We got video and updates. Be sure to share our pages with your friends.
Also, don't forget to use the hashtag VOA Our Voices. We're on WhatsApp too. Send us your messages and videos. Our number is US country code +1 304 506 3638. So reach out to us and add your voice to our discussion in our new segment. That's coming up right after the break.
Welcome back. In our new segment, Your Voices. A Chicago-based tour group catering to LGBTQI clientele was recently in the middle of a controversy in Ethiopia when they planned to visit the country's historic religious sites. After receiving death threats, here is what Dan Ware, the owner of the tour company, had to say about laws in Ethiopia.
It's not a crime. As far as I understand the penal code of Ethiopia, it's a crime to act on homosexuality, to have a homosexual act. You can't legislate what's in someone's heart. And being gay isn't something that anybody chooses. It's just something that's inside, and can't legislate against that. That's just the way people are. There are many gay people in Ethiopia who have reached out to me as a result of this controversy. saying, we're so glad you're coming. Please be a voice for us. We are voiceless. We can't speak up. They're using this against us. We're afraid. It's a very sad situation.
Well, we hit the streets and ask people, should gay rights be legal or not? Why or why not? This is what you had to say.
I have experienced being around friends of mine that are gay and who feel uncomfortable in situations back at home in the Eastern Cape where they are not accepted by their families, and especially when we go to church or when they go to church. Or even just a wedding where they have to just keep quiet on the subject when they can hear, and we can all hear, the minister shouting out that, oh, thank goodness this boy is not gay. So that just makes me shiver.
I feel, that's killing the world, because there is no product, you cannot, a man to man, you cannot produce anything. So we really disapprove that whoever is claiming those rights, and that's very unfortunate for those who are practicing that.
I don't want it to be legal, but I don't want it to be criminalized also, because everybody has their own choice. You cannot demand somebody to go on what you want to do. So I'm on, 50-50 on it.
I do not subscribe to the fact that we should legalize gay rights. Why? Because God has created man to meet a woman, and God also created woman to meet man. So I don't see it working out.
That is an individual choice, but I also I don't agree that people are naturally born that way. But if that's the way that people choose to be, then that's completely up to them.
Well, that's what some of you had to say, but you who didn't get a chance to do so, tell us on social media what you think the new laws should be surrounding gay rights. Should it be legal or not? And be sure to watch our voices on the VOA website, where you can find the world's latest news stories.
And that is our show this week. Thank you to our guest, Edafe Okporo, the Executive Director of RDJ Refugee Shelter, for joining us. And of course, Salem Solomon, always great to have you here. Thank you very much for being on the show today. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.